Said this under the pretense of, look, you raise such good mink, even the mink that you're going to kill tomorrow, just sell them, we'll pay you the pelt price for them. And the reason we agreed to pay him money was because he wanted to get out of the business. He was done. He wanted to go back to school. And he wasn't primarily a fur farmer, he was a wildlife biologist with the Montana Fish and Wildlife and Parks Department. So we rationalized that in this instance, it was okay for us to give him the $8,000 that he put on the price on his farm. And we bought out every single animal there. And one of the reasons why we did that is because we made a promise to those mink that we saw getting killed that day, as well as every single animal left on your farm. We said this under the pretense of, look, you raise such good mink, even the mink that you're going to kill tomorrow, just sell them, we'll pay you the pelt price for them. And the reason we agreed to pay him money was because he wanted to get out of the business. He was done. He wanted to go back to school. And we hung up and we had this discussion, and we called him back and we said, well, we'll buy your mink, but only if you sell. We hung up and we had this discussion, and we called him back and we said, well, we'll buy your mink, but only if you sell us every single animal left on your farm. History, there is a story of sacrifice, and I can guarantee you that it is most likely greater than any that we have made to this day in our own lives. And like I said, I spent 4 years in prison for these actions that I'm talking to you about. That's why I'm able to talk to you about. But they didn't stop at OSU. We continued throughout the year 1991, targeting every recipient of Mink Farmer Research Fund grants. We targeted Washington State University's experimental fur farm unit, destroying research there, rescued 6 mink, 7 coyotes, and 10 mice. We targeted Utah State University's predator research facility. We targeted Michigan State University's experimental fur farm. We targeted the Northwest Fur Breeders Cooperative, causing a $500,000 arson fire there. We shut down the Malecki Mink Farm in December of '91 with an arson attack. It was up for sale, never to house a mink again after our raid. All of these actions were carried out by a handful of people with very little money, but with lots of commitment. And I say that to you because that is all we got. We're never going to have the budgets of Greenpeace or the Humane Society, but what we have is our commitment, our belief in knowing that what we're fighting for is right. When I went to prison, the day before my sentencing, in 1994, 3 years after all this stuff had happened, part of the evidence against me was the videotapes that I had made on the fur farms, and I took them from my lawyer's files home with me that night, and I just watched them. I hadn't watched them in 3 years. And when I watched that neck breaking, because up to this point, I was scared to death of imprisonment. There was nothing, I had gotten over the fear of dying. You know, that no longer bothered me, but what I feared was being put into a small cage like a mink. And here I was. I knew I faced a plea bargain of 41 to 51 months. My plea bargain was in exchange for accepting responsibility for the actions that I carried out against the fur trade. I was allowed a plea bargain. They offered me a plea bargain of 18 months if I told them. They didn't want to know who I was working with. They wanted to know where our money was coming from. Because they know that there's people like you that exist. They know that there's always going to be people willing to break into fur farms and releasing mink, opening the cages, doing what's right. What they wanted to stop was the people who fund those people. So I obviously refused.